just go to it, turn left, right, 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 left, right. That's how you get into it. Once you get into it, there is essentially about 7 different steps that you can get to. The first one is the error codes. So I got into diagnostic modes, I turn my knob again to the right, 0, 1, or just the done light will show up. Hit start, I'm getting into my error codes. The error codes will look like this. All of our error codes will have an F code and an E code. They will always follow that. You're always going to have an F code with an E code. So for instance, on this one on the bottom here, we have an F7 and then an E1. How I know it's an F7 E1, if I have the estimated time screen, it will tell me that, which is awesome. But a lot of times you don't have that. So over here, we actually have to count. If you have the done light, that's going to stand for 1. The spin light is going to stand for 2. The rinse light is going to stand for 4. It's a binary system. So 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 7. I know it's my F code because the fill or the sensing light is always on. So whenever that's on, that's an F code. When it's off, over here, that's going to be my E code. And I just have the done light, which stands for 1. So that's F7, E1. You can always just line it up too with the tech sheet. Does that make sense? Just making sure. Where is the tech sheet located at on this product?
Inside the front.
Inside the front. So you got to take the top off, reach in, scratch up your whole hand, grab that tech sheet, and read it.
You can have it from the bottom.
Having it in the bottom, they're afraid that a little bit of splash will get it wet.
No, we reach underneath it and rip it out.
You can. Yeah, long arm.
Yeah.
It's never going back. That's what I do.
Nice. All right. So just keep that in mind. That tech sheet too is extreme. If you guys haven't seen it before, I do recommend you download it on servicematters.com or take the next one that you guys run into. But it is extremely thick. There's a lot of information on there. Read through it because it's a lot of stuff, and it'll tell you exactly how this product works. So if you have that, put it in the John, read it while you're there, whatever. It's really good information to have. Yeah.
You know what I did is I went through and I just downloaded the manual because it's the same on every one of them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I just took the file, copied it, and put it into my computer, so I don't have to pull it up every time. I just pull that particular one up.
That's a really good idea. And honestly, the manual for an impeller model compared to an agitator model, it's essentially the same thing. So, and I'll talk about what the only differences are with those two. So anyway, that's an error code. So make sure you guys understand how error codes work. Controls. When you look at the actual control, right where this green box is, there's going to be a little green light. If that little green light is on, that means that all the voltage to the board is correct. Bless you. So your 120 volts from the wall to the board, that's good to go. If that's on, check something else. Check your outputs of your board, check a component, whatever it may be. It's not the board's fault. If that light is not on and the unit is plugged in, first check your power source. Make sure you got 120 volts going to the washer. But if you do have that voltage coming in, it's a bad board. Okay? This is huge. This is in the tech sheet. This picture, as you can see, it kind of just shows you what all the different connectors on the board are going to. So, for instance, my top one up here, my J2, is my shifter. That's always going to be all of the low voltage wires going to the shifter. Down here, J16, that's going to be all my motors. So it's going to be my shifter motor, and then it's also going to be my regular drive motor. That's all the wires going there. So you can tell right here where everything's going. If you ever have to replace a board, don't guess where things are going. Put it in the right area. Okay? Use this as a tool for you. Down here is absolutely huge too. So in every tech sheet that we have going forward, we're going to start putting this on there. What this says, if you guys can't read it, is J24 is a black wire with 13 volts DC. So we're labeling every single wire on every connector, telling you what the color is and also if it has any voltage associated with it. Don't guess. Okay, use this as a tool. If you're trying to guess, maybe the pink wire is ground. The pink wire is never ground. Okay, use this to help you out. All right. This is what your wiring diagram looks like. You have a copy of that in front of you. We're going to kind of talk about that for a little while, but just to point out a couple of different things. The L1 comes in this way. Our ground is also, that's our green wire here. All of our relays are always on the L1 side for this product. So we have no neutral breaks on this. All of them are on the L1 side. That is different from our alpha and our front load washer. So just FYI for you guys there. This is what it looks like all the way through. We're going to talk about that in detail here in a minute. Okay. Low voltages. Our shifter is located up here. our thermistor, water temperature thermistor located here, and our user interface. The big difference between an impeller model and a agitator model is right where my arrow is. On the impeller models, that is a pressure transducer. So the pressure tube comes up and connects directly to the control board. That's how it's sensing the pressure inside the tub. In the agitator models, we don't have the pressure transducer on the board. We actually have a pressure switch. That's the big difference. Okay? Does that make sense?
Right. So the boards are different.
The boards are different between an agitator and an impeller. Okay. This is a shifter. What are the three functions of a shifter? Who can tell me?
One is shift.
Shifts from agitate to spin.
Senses if it's spinning or not.
Position sensor.
It senses if it's spinning or not. Okay. I probably got to get this off there. So it shifts from agitate to spin. It senses if it's spinning or not, and then also the last one is there's actually a switch inside here that will make sure it'll track if it's in agitation or spin mode. Okay. So those are three functions. If you do not have this on your truck, get one. Okay, get two. This is probably the most popular part to fail on the product. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The other thing too I like to point out here is that if you have a fault code that references a shifter in any way, shape, or form, a shifter, to take that off is 4 screws. I recommend you guys replace it, or at least change it out. That way it's 15 minutes, take those 4 screws out, and if it fixes it, you're out the door. No more time wasted. So. All right, the other thing too is the splutch. This is probably maybe the second most popular. All these different parts here come in a kit. So if you order one of them, it comes with all of them. All these are mainly plastic pieces. They're going to wear at the same rate. So if you have to replace one because it's worn out, we want you to replace all of them. Does that make sense?
So if you order a pulley, you're going to get everything now?
That's the only exception. The pulley is the only one that you can order by itself. And that's only in case during shipping, if it breaks or whatever, you just need to throw a new one on there. So you guys run into those, the nuts on the bottom of them falling down? You're welcome. All right.
Yeah, thank you for those. Yeah.
All right, just make sure you guys put Loctite on those. That's the biggest one that we have right
And
now.
that's where you'll, a lot of times you will need a pulley from that.
Yeah.
From it being loosened.
And it's mainly because the pulley drops down and rubs on that casing, outer casing. So. But all right, so this is the splutch, and just making sure you guys know that that's the second most popular. It's probably a good idea to have that at least in inventory. I'm not sure if you need it on your truck yet or not, because we haven't go through that many of them. But it's a good idea to have. Okay, so talking about how this machine actually works. You may have seen this slide before. Okay, this is a very easy machine. There's not much parts moving on there. So right here we have our gear case, our shifter, our splutch. If you notice, the teeth are not connected, and our belt is connected to our motor. Our belt is actually, our motor is going back and forth. So now we're in agitation mode. So our motor is what's making this thing go into agitation mode. We're not doing anything else with the gear case or anything like that. Okay? We're in agitation mode. We want to shift over, and we want to go into spin mode. So our shifter is going to shift over. Our splutch is going to connect the teeth on the bottom to the pulley. Our motor then is going to kick into gear one way, clockwise, and now we're going to be spinning. That's it. That's how this machine works. This motor is a PSC motor, so when we go into agitation mode, we go back and forth, clockwise to counterclockwise windings. We use a run capacitor inside there that will help use both of the windings and not overheat it. So that's how we're not wearing out our motor too fast. Any questions on this?
The cap is in the motor?
It's by the motor. It's down on the motor assembly. Yeah, it's separate.
Has anybody else had any problems with the capacitor on this machine?
Just breaking off and hanging there and breaking the wire off.
We'll talk about that in a minute here too. All right, always run diagnostics. That's the key part on this. Make sure you guys are running diagnostics. There's ways that you can diagnose this machine without even taking a tool out of your toolbox. Okay, so that diagnostic mode is very intensive, I guess, or intense, and it works very well. If you're looking at the shifter, okay, just looking at how to diagnose the shifter, this is our shifter circuit. So all of the J2 connector right here, that's all of our low voltage that I was talking about earlier. Our J16 has the 120 volts going to the shifter motor. So those are the only two connections that you're going to be needing in order to use, properly diagnose the shifter. So the connection up there, J2 and J16 on the bottom. So our shifter motor, if we look at the strip circuit from there, J16.1 to J16.2, that's going to be our shifter motor. So you can ohm that out if you wanted to. Should get roughly 2,000 to 3,500 ohms. You can also check for voltage, but you're only going to get 120 volts there when the shifter is actually running. So in order to check for voltage, you're going to have to go into the manual diagnostic mode, shift it yourself, and check for the voltage at that time. I recommend that you guys just check resistance. It may be easier for you. Looking at the actual wire diagram, this is what we were following. So there's your shifter motor going all the way to 120 volts going in from J16.1. Okay. Looking at the low voltage side, if you look at this line, okay, so we have blue, pink, gray, black. Those are your wires going for low voltage. If you look at your gray here, your gray wire, that's going to be your ground. So essentially, if you wanted to check all the low voltage, you can take your meter, take your black probe, leave it on ground on that gray wire, and just move your red probe and check everything else out. Does that make sense? So if we want to check the shifter switch, that's going to be J21 to J23, so our gray wire to our blue wire. And that's just a simple switch. So if it's open, we're in the spin mode. If it's closed, we're in the agitation mode. That's all you're really checking for. 5 volts DC when it's in the agitation mode, and 0 volts when it's in the spin mode. Okay? If you want to check the voltage coming from the main board to the shifter, that's going to be your black wire down here. So that's the 13 volts DC coming in from J24 over to your optical eye sensor. So if we leave our black pin on the gray wire, and we put our red pin on the black wire, we're going to be checking for 13 volts DC. That should be there at all times that the unit is on. So as long as my control board is on, you should be getting 13 volts DC. If my control board is off, you should be getting, I think, like 2.3 volts DC. Okay? All right, and then my last one is my optical eye sensor, which is going to be between J22 and J23, so my gray wire and my pink wire. And that is going to be the voltage coming back in from the optical eye sensor. So if you guys haven't seen the optical eye sensor, it's sitting on a flywheel. It's located right here, and that flywheel has holes in it. As the tub moves, it blocks this optical eye sensor. So as you go and you spin the tub manually, you should be seeing on that line 0 volts, 5 volts, 0 volts, 5 volts, 0 volts, 5 volts. It's going to go back and forth just like that. That means it's working correctly. If you only see 0 volts, or if you only see 5 volts, it's not working right. Make sense? Okay. There is also a way to check that shifter without using any tools. And the way to do that is if you get into diagnostic mode, okay, so I go left to clear, right, 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 left, right. I turn to step number 9. Step number 9, if you guys haven't used this before, is a tachometer reading. And what you're going to do is you're going to turn to step 9, hit start, and then open up the lid and manually spin the tub. When you manually spin that tub, the lights should flash on and off in order, showing you that that optical eye sensor is actually working. So essentially, that is like putting your probe here on the pink and the gray wire and checking for that voltage. So if that's working right, you know you're getting 13 volts in from your main board. You know that you're getting it back from the other side. All you really have to check is your shifter switch, which you could just listen for. Does that make sense?
Now, how did you do that? How did you do
Go into diagnostic mode.
Yeah.
Left to clear, right, 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 left, right. Turn to step number 9. So, like step number 1,
What is 9 supposed to be?
tachometer.
Tachometer reading?
Yeah,
Is that one in the book?
it is in the book. But it's not listed as one of the actual steps. It's listed in one of the procedures to test the shifter.
Do you know which lights are on?
Which way?
Which lights come on in that
It'll
step?
be the wash and the done.
Wash and done.
That's 8 and 1 if you're.
Exactly. Exactly right. Catching on, all right. I like it. Any other questions about the shifter? Again, it's a very key part to this product. So make sure you guys understand how that thing works, and you're able to diagnose it properly. There is also a way to ohm out the harness directly from the control board. So you don't have to get underneath to the actual shifter in order to do this. You can just pop the top off, go to the control board, and ohm out the harness that way. I'm not going to go over it, but it's in the tech sheet, or the job tech sheet, there you go, as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the drive motor. So you have a copy of the wiring diagram in front of you. I apologize I don't have markers, but you do have pens in front of you too. So we're going to trace the circuit through the drive motor. So go in from L1 in neutral, go to your motor, and we're going to say it's going to